All righty. Thanks, everybody. Good to see everybody online here. Appreciate this audience, and I appreciate the guests that have joined with me. My name is Brian Meekum, and today we're going to have a pretty exciting time for you guys to listen to this conversation here. So far online with me, we've got Kirk Lacob. He's the Executive Vice President of Basketball Operations. Hi, Kirk. I'll let you introduce yourself in a minute. And then I've got Ken Lavelle. He's an SVP of Golf Technology at PGA Tour. And my name is Brian Meekum. I am Vice President at Verizon and in charge of 5G sports innovation. So this group represents some of the biggest names in professional sports, and I'm just excited for all of you to get to hear from them. So, Kirk, why don't you tell us a little about yourself first?
Yeah, hi, thanks. Well, I'm Kirk Lacob, as Brian mentioned. I'm Executive Vice President of Basketball Operations for the Golden State Warriors. It's a really fun job when you win, less fun when you lose. We did a lot of winning for a long time, and hope to be back there soon. But I've kind of an all-encompassing job between business and basketball, and this is a great place to do it.
Wow, real nice. All right, and so you're coming to us from San Francisco today, right?
I am, yeah. And as
Very
you
nice.
mentioned in the pre-call, you can tell by my pipes up above me.
They're very industrial looking. That's good. We like that. Okay, Ken, so coming to us from a beach in Florida. Tell us about yourself, Ken.
I'm not sure if you guys can hear me. I apologize,
We can.
but I have no audio whatsoever, so I can't hear the questions you're asking.
Okay.
So I'm going to try and leave and then come back just so everybody can see what's going on with me.
Okay, real good. Thanks, Ken. So we'll give him a minute. So while we're waiting for Ken to bounce and come back, I'll just tell you this group. It's a great group. We're a little small right now. They'll be coming back in, and we expect to actually have one more join us from the NHL. But these guys have seen firsthand, incredibly tight margins between victory and defeat. Just what Kirk alluded to. Championships can be won or lost on a single free throw or a shot on goal. A missed putt can cost a player the chance to wear the green jacket in August. So we're going to talk to you today about next-gen sports technology and data analytics being leveraged. So we're going to talk about how you can help individual players and teams gain a competitive advantage. We're going to talk about how to make sports better, more competitive, and we're going to talk about how to improve the fan experience. And you're going to hear that we have a lot going on in these areas, and there's a lot to get into that. I just think you're going to enjoy hearing about how technology is really influencing sports. So let's talk, Kirk, if we can, about maintaining and achieving a competitive edge, at the highest level of all sports. You were talking about how you guys were winning so much in the past, and you want to get back to that. Can you share how players, coaches, and/or teams in your sport specifically are embracing technology to gain a competitive advantage?
Yeah, it's a great question. Things have changed a lot. I think, a lot of this goes back, unsurprisingly, to Moneyball, which is really what I grew up with. And it's about finding that small edge to win, which I think people have been doing in sports forever. But suddenly there was data that could help you sport it, objective data. And so we've seen, I think, baseball like a rocket ship change over the years, and basketball follows suit, but in a different way. I mean, it's basketball's a little bit more dynamic in the sense that there's continuous play. Players have to play offense and defense kind of continuously. There's 5 players moving in motion on the court. A little bit different than baseball, which is, of course, specific instances. There's a pitch, there's a swing. You have kind of a gridded field, which isn't to say that one is better than the other at all, but it just made it more of a challenge. And more of a technical challenge to ultimately catch up. And I think, over the last 10 years, and really especially in the last 5, we have seen technology change so rapidly that it has really enabled us to get better data. And I tell this to people all the time. I used to get to work with Jerry West, which was just an incredible experience. So much fun, and I absolutely love Jerry. But one of the things you find out working with Jerry is, not all of us have the same computer that we're working with.
Okay.
And by that, I mean, his brain is just different. A lot of the things that we're able to measure now using technology, and we're able to see using, kind of much more big data, much more advanced analytics platforms. He was able to do a lot of that in his head and couldn't really explain it.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And I think that's beautiful, and that's what makes him so special. But other teams want to be able to do what Jerry West was doing, and couldn't do it without really the use of technology. And now it's accessible to anybody who works hard enough and is smart enough to figure it out. And of course, you do have to be careful, because you can tell any story you want with data. You can kind of wrap the data to fit your narrative, which I think is certainly something still at play in sports. But yeah, it's that has been a huge change on the competitive landscape. I feel like people are on a much more level playing field. But that being said, there are layers to it. And I think the most important thing, and then I'll stop, is that you can have all the tools in the world, but at the end of the day, if you can't communicate any of that, it's pretty worthless. You can have great data that tells you all the answers to everything, and I'm going to leave with that. And so my kind of metaphor here is, in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, there's a race of like super mice. I know I'm getting kind of deep here, but they create a computer that is supposed to tell them the answer to life, the universe, and everything. And at the end of this computer program's run, the computer spits back the answer is 42. And the mice are looking around and they're like, what is 40? What? How can the answer be 42?
Yeah,
and the computer says, well, you actually have to learn to ask the right question, and I need you to build a supercomputer smarter than me to figure that out. And I won't ruin the rest of the book, because that's really the story. Although I guess if you haven't read it in the last 30 years, that's on you. But I love that. I think we can have all these great answers to things, but if you don't know the right questions to ask, it really doesn't matter in the end.
Yeah, no, I love that story. That's really good. I'm seeing that too with NBA players that we work with, and we give them data, we give them information. And, in the last playoffs of last year, there was a player that we're working with that just did not want to accept that their injury was impacting their shooting ability. And then the reality is, once we showed that data, or the team showed them that data, they demonstrated, hey, look, you're actually shooting a little less than what you're used to, and actually what we expect in the NBA. The person took some time off, and then they came back and think, it was a positive story about how their improvement went back up. So I'm just curious, from an NBA basketball player standpoint, how are you getting players to trust the data? You referenced how difficult it is to weed it down to exactly just what they need to see, but how do you get them to trust it?
That's exactly the question to ask. It is nuanced. It is really about hiring the right people to help you tell these stories, to help it put it in a common language. I will say that players are generally changing in their reception towards things. A lot of younger kids are growing up with this sort of data and this sort of vernacular around the game. I can tell you, when I started in the NBA, not a single player that I was aware of, maybe Shane Battier, was aware what points per possession or points per shot could mean. They're like, what are you talking? PPP, PPS, offensive rating, defense rating. They're like, this is French to me. Now, when we're interviewing players coming out of college, and mind you, these are often 19 and 20-year-olds. These are not even kids who have graduated and spent 4 years taking classes. Yeah, exactly. But it's in what they've been doing in high school and college and AAU. And so it just, that change at the root of it makes things a lot easier. Just speaking the language. I mean, it's readily apparent that like adults have a harder time learning new languages.
Yeah, sure.
Math, numbers is a language. And I think, instilling that into sports at a younger age has really changed people and changed the game. So all that being said, you still have to hire the right communicators. Like, even though the players are more receptive and better understanding what's going on, you still have to hire the right coaches who can take that data, wrap it up, and then go to a player and say, hey, this is what I'm trying to get out of you. We don't want you taking this shot because the data says this shot is better for the team, or this is better, or you need to make an extra pass here, or I know you like to play defense like this, but given our team composition and the way teams are playing, this is what's really proven to be more effective. And you just have, so in that sense, coaching hasn't changed at all. it's still who connects with the players the best. You just as a coach have to be more aware of everything else.
Wow, that's awesome. I do appreciate that. This younger generation, as you hear coaches talk, they absolutely need to find ways to communicate and connect in a way different than they did with players in the past. Players in the past, I think, had an approach and you could just be singular focused. Nowadays, these people coming into leagues, they have a different perspective, and it's not like the old school at all. They think and communicate very differently. They DM each other. You know, it's not pick up a phone call type thing. So, all right. So we've got Ken Lavelle back. So Ken, sorry about your technical difficulties there. Glad you can hear us and we can hear you. So same question to you. I asked Kirk. Kirk gave us some good information there. Can you share how players in golf specifically are embracing the latest technologies to gain a competitive advantage?
Yeah, so the easier thing for me to say, since I missed a lot of what he said, but hearing the very eloquent things that Kirk said is just what he said. They're doing all that. I'm joking. No, they basically
they're deep in it.
Yeah, the players are we're seeing a generational shift, and players are really embracing this. And it's funny because it's a very different world in golf than it is in team sports. In team sports, you have a group of people that are trying to help a player to understand what it needs to do to help the team, whereas a golfer generally is the team. And they have an interesting relationship to data because they look at it as a competitive advantage, but they also think of it as something. So they want to make sure that they're not sharing too much, and they don't want to tell other people about it. But they've got to find the right people to trust, and they usually don't have a team that is already doing that for them. So it really comes down. It's being serious for a second. It is what Kurt talked about. It's who's communicating and helping that player with an insight so that it's useful to them, and it's not just. I mean, the data itself is a challenge, and it's funny, Kirk, you said something about getting them to trust the data. I'll tell you guys just a funny story. Back when we first put ShotLink on the ground in the early 2000s, our network partners didn't believe the data. We're literally shooting the ball with a laser and getting a three-dimensional inch, coordinate. And they said, no, my guy just walked it off. And he said, it's, you're off by 2 feet. And I don't know how to help them, so now that we're way past that, obviously, and the trust is there and sensors and measurement. But players are now taking that trust and you've got to they've got to find the right person that can take that data and make it into something that's useful. And we're actually carrying that go well beyond the players for a second and into fans. Because, at the end of the day, the score is the score. But the why question becomes really important. And there's a lot of data that you can spew that really doesn't tell much of a story or help you anymore with the game. And the trick that we're having is both for it's for different audiences, for players, for fans. How does this matter? Like, what helps me understand what's going on in a way that tells me a story that I care about, that keeps me emotionally invested in the game?
Wow, that's awesome. So do you feel like, just like Kirk and I were talking about, the younger generation is more accepting of the tech that you provide them?
Very much so.
Okay.
I mean, go ahead, Kirk. I don't know if you want to talk to that first. We find that, I think that there is a generational shift. We're seeing players that are much more comfortable with the idea of data, and also some opinion leaders that matter a lot. When you have players that are very successful, that embrace data, you find that it tends to permeate and they start looking. Bryson DeChambeau is an interesting guy to talk to just about data. He thinks about things in a different language than a lot of the other players out there, but they are embracing it more and more across the board. And really for them, I say this again, it just goes back to them finding the right, you need an analyst and someone that can take that analysis and explain it in a way that is useful to them. That's what makes it make the most difference. And then get beyond just your basic, greens and regulation is not an interesting statistic. I hate to say that. It's just not that helpful. And you've got to get into something that's a whole lot more depth than that they know, that tells them what to do, where and when and how to do it. And that doesn't even get into, by the way, when golf becomes a team sport. So when you're in a Ryder Cup, President's Cup, kind of world, that's a whole other level of analysis. And that has been embraced at a very deep level by the team captains and the people that run the organizations for those.
Yeah, that's interesting. So the next question that we go into, Ken, is, how are you working to provide actionable data to players, OEMs or teams? But in this scenario, I think fans here listening would be curious to know what that difference is between an individual, how they get supported. So does an individual hire a couple people? Do they listen to the PGA itself? Or how does an individual in golf different than who had, an NBA team who has an entire support structure? How do they deal with that first? And then second, can you tell us that different nuance but congratulations, by the way, to America for winning the cup there. But how would they come together and not share too many secrets, but yet share enough? Go ahead.
Yeah. So, first off, we were just rooting for a great competition, and I was saying all the right things here about, but yeah, we had a pretty good week. But and I should say it's the PGA of America that actually runs that event, but we definitely support them and work hand in hand with those guys. But to answer your question, we are in an interesting position. The PGA Tour is for those that don't know this, we're actually a player organization. So we are both the league and the team, or in this instance. I like to use the phrase, we love all of our children. We don't give anybody any advantage over another, and we try and help them all as much as we can. What that means in practice is that we will provide everybody all the data that they want about their own game and about how the playing field looks and everything about that. And we've got some pretty deep mechanisms in place to collect that now, to support both our players, our sport, our media partners, and everyone else all the way down the line. From there, what they will do with that data is they will often find their own trusted organization. There are companies, analytics companies that they work with sometimes, or a person, a unique individual that they just believe has the secret sauce that's figured it out.
Okay.
And a lot of time that's essentially they've got a coach, they've got a physio guy, and they'll have an analytics guy that will help them to do and put all those things together.
Wow. So these guys have to go out, though, and find that on their own. They have to find that trust circle. They have to find the trust data that they want to use. And then they have to kind of become their own support structure.
Yeah, no, to be super clear, we do provide them a certain level of analysis and visualization across the board. But that's something that just goes into a standard set that everybody gets and they can use. And some of the guys they'll just do that themselves. They'll start diving into that and do a little bit on their own. But the ones that go deep will go pretty deep. And those are the people that we will work with on getting them raw data and feeds and some of that kind of work.
Nice. So one of the things that you missed earlier when you had to drop off and come back was Kirk was talking about Jerry West, how he was wired differently and his brain almost operated like all of this analytics today and people have access to. But he didn't know why necessarily. That's just the way he thought and worked. So it's amazing when technology can help level that playing field, when you can have people who have the talent but don't necessarily have that Jerry West wiring. And they can come in and compete and bring a different perspective. You get diversity. You get equal opportunity almost. So I love that data can level that playing field for people who have talent. All right, so Kirk, let's pivot back to you. So basketball is definitely a different game. There isn't protective equipment. You don't have the luxury of downtime between shots, for example. What are you guys doing or using to collect data to make it easier and better for the players? Like how are you as an organization, or how's the NBA supporting you?
Yeah, it's it's funny. There are a lot of parallels actually between basketball and golf, which is probably why golf has become so big in the NBA.
Oh, okay.
And obviously there's differences in the physical dynamics, and like you said, but mentally there are a lot of similarities between hitting a golf shot and shooting. And we've actually found the mechanics are weirdly related. Those who are really good shooters tend to be pretty good swingers. It doesn't necessarily mean they're good golfers, but they tend to have really good swings. And so anyways, from a technology standpoint, I would be willing to bet we're using a lot of the same kind of general tech, which is motion capture. We've really over the last 10 years, really big dive into motion capture technology. It just allows us to get so much information without getting in the way. There was a thought at one point, I think, that on-body sensors was going to be the way to go just from an accuracy standpoint. And we probably will talk about this at some point, but real-time analytics, getting real-time data, always a thought that on-body was going to be able to do that better. But at the end of the day, players just did not want to wear anything. They could tell, even though they couldn't tell, they could tell when they were wearing something.
Wow. Okay.
And, I think we're all superstitious to an extent. Like for instance, whether it's golf or basketball, I can't wear anything. Like I'm one of those people, I could never wear an ankle brace. I couldn't wear a headband. It just got in the way for me. And so I think we saw the same thing. Some players just couldn't do it. So anyways, we heavy into motion capture. There's a long story about how this started, but the NBA is now serviced by a platform called Second Spectrum, which was recently acquired. And I believe it's 32 cameras up in the rafters taking 24 frames per second. So you get millions and millions of data points, and then the overlaying software or underlying software allows us to basically know every movement that players are making, where the ball's going, compute the speeds of all of that. And you can get some really interesting stuff out of that. You layer on some AI, some machine learning, and you can, teach basically a video tool that knows what plays are being run.
Okay.
Who are the players who are doing this? What type of action? Is that a pick and roll, or is it, a weak side, baseline cut? Is it drop defense, or are you hedging the pick and roll? So all of that is really, as I mentioned earlier, it's just enabled us to see things that certain people were seeing all the time. But in addition to that, this is, I think, the biggest point is that no matter how much you try to watch basketball, you cannot watch every single game being played. It is absolutely impossible.
The human brain doesn't have the capacity or time to do it.
We just do not have the time. I will tell you, I watch hundreds of games, full games per year. And that doesn't even come close to if I was to watch every single NBA game in a season. And so this technology allows us to get that data for every game. And as you both know, a small sample size doesn't really do you very much good. There's just not a lot of validity to it. And so, we're able to gather large data sets and compare them year over year. And that's really been the big change. As I mentioned earlier, the big thing we're still trying to solve for is the speed at which some of this data is received. At which point, how quickly can we use that data and make decisions with it? And in some ways, we're pretty quick, and in some things, there's enough a delay that that's really not in-game usable stuff. But that's really been the change over the last 10 years, and as I mentioned, the last 5 years has seen an especially big uptick.
Oh, nice. Okay, well, I do appreciate that with regard to sensors and the difference between computer vision off of that. I'm sure players, even in golf, I want to ask you real quick about that, Ken, before we pivot to our next topic of video. Is that something that, because even in the NFL, they might wear something in their pads. I know they use zebra sensors in there, but I don't think the players want it on their body, or I wouldn't think that they'd want it on their golf club. So how are PGA players thinking about wearables or sensors on the body?
So right now there are no wearables. We're not measuring anything in for the same reasons, largely the same reasons.
Okay.
That may change over time, but we're not doing anything like that. There are some heart rate things that are going on. A little bit of players are using some of that technology, but
for
nothing along
themselves
those lines.
or for broadcast purposes.
Both, actually. They're using it for themselves,
really?
And some of that's getting incorporated a little bit into broadcast. The problem is with a heart rate sensor is that the analogy I use is if I put a heart rate sensor on you and you bungee jumped, it'd spike and it'd be cool. For someone that bungee jumped every day, 6, 8, 25 times, it's just work, and it's not interesting. You have to really get a baseline of data to make that an interesting something that you can really understand and know why it's meaningful. So like anything else, it just matters.
Okay. And thanks, that's helpful. Is there any potential for any type of sensor on a club? It feels like there's space inside the club possibly for swing speed.
Well, there you've got that. That's a long conversation about the mechanics of how you make equipment. So we are really focused on sensors that fall in a lot of other areas. We're putting radar all over the golf course. We're using camera vision technology. Every green is covered with cameras now. We're using lasers, and then there's a telecom layer that we use to get that back. I'm actually jealous of Kirk. Of having an arena that's an enclosed space, and because we're looking at, right? Well, think about doing that in 150 or 200 acres, and then putting it down and taking it up every week and making sure you don't miss a single shot. Because our objective is to get the ball in motion from every player across every fairway, and even when they don't hit it, because they don't always, all the time, and then report that and get that data back in a pretty tight time frame within seconds. So it's and for us, it's funny you mentioned, Kirk, about nobody can watch all the basketball, which makes total sense. When you run the numbers on any given today, right now, actually, at any given second today on Thursday, there are 12 balls in the air right now across. Think of it as 18 playing fields that we just have to figure out what's going on and find out which shot mattered right now. And what's important about it.
Yeah, as well as broadcast wants to always have the exciting moment, right?
Yeah, yeah. So we're working
Yeah.
actually on stats that helps those guys as well to determine what is the roar-worthy moment that just happened or is about to that you need to tell a story around.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's actually a good segue into video. So, all of you, your different leagues respectively are using video in different ways, and I'm sure you have, as you've alluded to, next level aspirations on how to use it for training, fan engagement. So, I want to dig into that a little bit. So, Kirk, what are some new ways you're using video either for fan engagement or team operations?
Well, video is a staple of of in-game play. That has
Okay.
not changed. The way video is actually cut and transferred has changed immensely with technology. I remember my first year here, and I like to think I'm not very old at all. I like to think I'm really one of the young guys in the NBA, and I think that's unfortunately changed. But when I first got here, they had just made the transition to digital. Literally the year before, we had
Oh
a single
boy.
video coordinator who was putting tapes in, so this tape taking that, and recording things over things, and I mean snipping. It was unbelievably cool to kind of learn about, and then I was like, this is impossible to learn. Now we have multiple video coordinators. It's all done on a laptop. You can teach someone how to do it relatively quickly. Within a couple of days, they can kind of master it if they're pretty technically proficient. Um, and we can automated clip things. So I guess I'm hitting the same theme here that we just have so much more video, and there's just so much more interactivity with that video. So we can hop instead of having to watch something and pause it and roll back. We've got clips based that are tagged, meta tagged with this sort of action, and it's got notes on there, and we can transfer that, to an iPad so that someone can watch it, effectively 15 seconds later if we need to. We
Wow.
actually, this is, I guess, the latest way we've used video, but there's a company that's allowed us to quickly review reviewable plays. In the NBA, you can now do a coach's challenge if you don't like the outcome of a call.
Mhm.
And we're actually able to quickly, on an iPad on the bench, rewind live play and
Oh.
watch it on this iPad and say, oh boy, we should challenge this, or coach, don't challenge that. So we've got someone in charge of that on the back of the bench so that the head coach doesn't have to worry about it.
So that
And
Kirk,
it's,
so that
yeah,
introduces something I didn't realize in watching sports. You watch the hockey and the NFL players, and they can pick up a tablet and quickly look, and you always see that on the sidelines type thing. When was that introduced for the NBA?
only in the last couple of years, and there's been
Oh, boy.
rules about it. There are always questions about competitive fairness and
Sure.
what do you want things to look. So they actually don't allow, I believe, still the iPad on the front of the bench during gameplay.
The players can't interact and watch what went on.
Yeah, you're really not supposed to. I mean, during timeouts, you can bring it to the front, and you will
Okay.
catch clips of players looking at something during a timeout. And the back of the bench, you can use one kind of during live play. So that has
Yeah.
changed a lot, though. I mean, you never saw a computer on the bench until 5 years ago, and
Yeah.
now you've got multiple tablets, and it has completely changed.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I do believe a stunning visual or playing back what you think you just saw on an iPad is super helpful. So I'm glad to hear Tech on the Bench has made it. That's as that continues to advance and as they continue to bring different angles and views and perspective and 3D to the players or the person watching it, it's going to help the game just improve and get more competitive. So, all right, thanks for that. So, Ken, let's talk about a golf match. So, you alluded to earlier the number of acres and your jealousy of the small little place in venue, the Kirk place that's permanent all the time. So fans walk around these giant courses and they want to keep up with every moment throughout the day. How are you solving for that, and how are you thinking about that down the road?
Well, there are a number of ways. I mean, we have a telecom problem on the golf course.
Okay.
Fans they just assume that it is a giant black hole because you got two problems. Even in a city environment, it is an open space, and usually cell
Mhm.
service isn't great there. And secondly, they know there are going to be hordes of people. So that's going to, if they can get a signal, it's not going to be very strong. So we're working actually on some ways that we can enhance that. Everything from substantial Wi-Fi last week at the Ryder Cup. Again, not our event, but we work with the guys there pretty closely. They had 500 public access points plus another 100 that we use just for scoring. that are located all over the golf course, and we use that. That's one level of it. The second level is that we're trying to make the content more available, useful, and interesting that we provide them. So if you did hear a roar over the hill, you know why. And even again, talking about a little bit what Kirk just mentioned. We work with we take all the video now that we ingest, and we run it on an immediate basis through AI services that will cut it. And so immediately they will recognize this is a shot from the sand, this was a shot from this player, and that's all tagged and posted immediately within 5 to 15 seconds. And we will run those highlights, and it becomes a fan enhancement so that you can watch your player. So the advantage of golf is, you have 144, 156 players on Thursday and Friday. The disadvantage is you have 144, 156 players, and who do I get to pick? Who do I want to watch? And you can only show so much in a broadcast. So we're working on tools. We've created a tool called TourCast for fans now that is essentially a video game-like interface that you can navigate in 3 dimensions. It includes even down to every tree on the golf course, and you can get down and look from behind a tree and see where the shot was. And we integrate all the data that we collected. So we have that radar data showing where the ball moved and how that shot was shaped. And you can see those trails and then see what the player's next look has. And then when you add to that, if there is a camera view, because we don't have it fully there yet, but we're working on it, that pops up in a window on that same screen. And fans can get that from the golf course as well. So even if you're sitting on the 5th hole, you can see what's happening on 9, 12, 15, 18 across the board.
Boy, that's awesome. And is that all brought through the PGA app, or is it specific to a golf course?
No, that is actually no. That's all through the app, the PGA Tours app, and we actually made it platform agnostic, so you can get through it through the website, through an app, or basically on any platform you go to.
Nice. So whatever access terminal somebody's at, they're game on.
They got it.
Yeah, cool. All right, so there's some questions flowing in. We have just got a few minutes left. I'm going to ask you, Kirk, I don't know if you're seeing those, but there's some compliments in there for the Golden State Warriors, and specifically how you're getting players to trust. I'm just going to summarize a few of the questions. How you're getting players to trust, and then the point spread, winning in games on the court. How are you guys thinking about that, or how are you applying that?
So sorry, which one do you want me to answer here? The first one about trust,
the first one about trust. We'll hit that one first.
Yeah. I think I mentioned this before, but it's really about relationships. It's about having the right people who players are going to trust, regardless if it's talking about data or family stuff or whatever. I mean, that's all the same. Gaining trust is no different in sports than it is in real life. You have to. You're not just going to earn someone's trust. I guess that's it. You have to earn it. You're not just going to have someone's trust. You have to earn it, and there is no substitute for that. Just because you've been named a coach does not mean you are a coach. To really be a coach, you have to earn that from players, and it is a really tough job, really, really hard. But I wish I had something like some secret sauce there, but it really is about relationship building. Yeah, it's just you've got to build that bridge of trust with people.
All right, so that's a coach to a player. Ken, you're more league to a golfer or league to a player. How do you gain their trust? And I'll let you wrap up with that, and then I'll ask Kirk for any final thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, in that case, really, we just try and make sure that we provide a level playing field, and make sure it's trust. It's making sure that they have that level of understanding that what we're giving them is every piece of data that they could possibly use, and giving them all the tools that they can use to make it a helpful tool in their game. If we don't have that, then it doesn't make any difference. So, and we also try and make sure we work with the right analytics people and the coaches, and just have relationships with them so that they know and understand what tools are available. And we're always doing development to try and just add more to that level for them, so that they've got additional things to look at, find, and what's the stat that matters to help them.
Yeah. Okay, that's helpful. I appreciate that. Any final thoughts for everybody here before we go?
Yeah, I just want to address, because there's one more question. You mentioned it, Brian, and I actually thought it was a really interesting question. So I just want to address it really quickly. And the question was about point spreads, and is this something that we talk about? I'm actually curious, Ken, too, where gambling is in golf and how that's affected things. But obviously it's considered a very dirty thing to talk about gambling in sports. But I think the basis for gambling is really they've been using analytics. They've been trying to
really
figure out why
They
a team. I mean, I've always thought, the point spread in Vegas is incredible. It's so incredibly accurate so often. And it's amazing. And they're using troves of data to figure out why something may or may not be true. And I think, something that maybe most people don't know is we use that sort of equivalent data internally to project how our team is going to be or how another team is going to be. And it does affect strategy. When you look at if a team is, maybe the best example, this is actually in March Madness, not in the NBA, but in March Madness, but we use it to an extent. If a team is better than you, you have to have a novel way to win. And the reality may be that 7 times out of 10, you're going to lose, but you're only playing one game. And so what can you do to boost your advantage? And a lot of that is, how do you figure out a way to reduce the kind of inevitable happenings? And so the example I'll give is if you're playing a team, and I'm going to give the Houston Rockets a ton of credit, and Daryl Morey, their former GM. When we played them, they completely changed their strategy. They realized they were not going to out-talent us, and they almost got us. They didn't, but they almost got us. They basically said, if we play at a fast pace, these guys play the best at a fast pace. That means more possessions, which means more opportunity for better talent to win. So what they decided they were going to do is reduce the number of possessions, basically by increasing the length of each possession, and reduce turnovers as much as possible. And basically they were going to say, and then we're going to shoot threes, which is the most volatile thing we can do. And basically the hope is the threes go in. And if the threes go in at above average rate, we catch you by an extra 4 points, which if your possessions are down 10% is a huge advantage.
Big swing.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess what I'll end with is, unfortunately for them, it's like the dealer flipping over blackjack 3 straight times. They missed 27 straight threes against us, and they didn't win. So that's my shot at the Rockets there. I'm only kidding because we had great battles, and I love Daryl. But no, I thought that was a really fascinating question. So I really, I just wanted to address it as kind of an ace in the hole.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Okay, so we are over time and we do need to end. I really appreciate Ken and Kirk jumping on here. I'm hoping you took something away from this when it comes to technology, and you heard a lot there from Kirk, even dating back to point spreads. Analytics plays a huge spot in sports. It's going to continue to, and I think with the technology, the faster iteration, the video, the data availability, it's going to make sports even more exciting as we go. So thanks, Kirk. Thanks, Ken. Appreciate your guys' time, and thanks for having us on this.
Thanks.